Okay. Did
Okay,
you
we're
hit
recording.
it? Okay. Here we are tonight at our book study. We're studying the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. I'm Linda Masteller, Heather Othout's mother, who's also under Heather. And I'm so glad you all are here tonight. We're going to record. I have a PowerPoint to share with you. We're going to try to keep it to 30 minutes. So, and if I can figure out how to do this all, because I don't do it too terribly often, but I'm going to hit the word share and share my screen with you. Can you all see my screen now? Yes? Okay, so here's my PowerPoint that I did for us tonight. This is by John, this book's by John Maxwell, which most of you, I think, know that my husband Rod used to work for John Maxwell. In fact, he mentions in these first two chapters we're going to talk about tonight, when he started his Equip section of his business, that's when Rod went to work for him, when he was doing Equip. And I think Rod just walked in the door. I think Rod was a vice president of Equip or something like that. I don't remember exactly. But anyway, it's a great book. Let's get started. If you look on, if you have the book, before page 1, there's an introduction. It talks about the word potential. It's one of the most powerful words in the whole English language. It's filled with optimism and hope, and it's based on possibilities, and it can get you very excited. But unfulfilled potential is almost just the opposite of that. It's really a very negative word. And he talks about someone on that very first page named Florence Littauer. When I was much younger, Florence Littauer was very, very popular. She wrote a book about the personality types. I can't remember the name of it, but I know I have it somewhere around here. Anyway, she talks about, and I loved listening to her. I've heard her speak a few times. She talks about her father. Her father always wanted to be a singer, but he passed away before he ever did anything about being a singer. And she said it's like not reaching your potential is like dying with the music still inside of you, because she said he died with having the music still inside of him because he never became a singer. So to reach your potential, you absolutely have to grow. That's what this whole book is about. To discover your purpose, you need to grow in self-awareness. To be a better human, you need to grow in character. To advance in your career, you need to grow in your skills. So your goal should be to grow. So let's go to chapter 1. The law of intentionality. Growth does not just happen by itself. He asked, do you have a plan for personal growth? John talks about how this man named, I think his name was Kurt asked him this question, and this question, John says, changed his life forever, because he stumbled around for the answer. He listed all his accomplishments from the 3 years prior. He outlined his goal. One of his goals was to reach more people, but all of his answers, he realized, were based on activity, not on improving. He had no plan to become better. It was something he had never thought about before, but he said that question changed his life. Hard work does not guarantee success. He talks about this fellow named Kurt was selling a growth kit, and it was a year-long plan, and it cost $799, and John said that was like a whole month's salary. But the reason it was so important to John is that John had been called to pastor a church. It was like considered the best, biggest church in his denomination. And he knew that he wasn't really qualified to pastor that church, and he needed to grow personally. So he needed to figure out some way to buy this $799 kit. So he went home, talked to his wife, Margaret, and they tried really hard to figure out a way to buy this kit, and they did. It took them 6 months to save the money, but they didn't go on the vacation they planned. They scrimped and saved, and after 6 months, they bought. And he was so thrilled when he took it home and started learning about how to actually grow. Everybody is anxious to improve their circumstances, but they're often not willing to improve themselves. So they remain bound, or they remain where they are. There are some mistaken beliefs that we have that create a gap between what keeps us from growing and reaching our potential. And the first one, in case you're following along in your book, it's on page 3, the assumption gap. I assume that I'm going to grow automatically. You know, if I just come do our Sunday night calls, if I just go to convention, if I listen to training, I'm just going to grow automatically. Like we grow when we're children, our bodies grow automatically. But as the years go by, we get taller and stronger, but we are not going to grow inside of us. We're not going to grow unless we do it intentionally. Bruce Springsteen said, a time comes when you need to stop waiting for the man you want to become and start being the man you want to be. So once you have finished, this was kind of an interesting thought. Once you've finished your formal education, you have to take charge of your growth process. Because when you're going to high school, when you're going to college, you know, somebody else is helping you grow. But when you are grown and you're not going to school anymore, you're in charge of your own growth. The second gap that sometimes gets created is, I don't know how to grow. Well, after he met with this man, Kurt, and Kurt said, what is your plan for growth? John figured that somebody out there had a plan. And so he went around, started talking to lots of different people. What is your plan for growth? And he says, not a single person had a plan for growth. No one told him. You know what? I forgot to mute everybody. But let me see. There's one. Well, I'm not sure. Lisa, can you do that? I hear a little noise in the background. Okay. So nobody had a plan for growth. Now, you may say, well, I went to the School of Hard Knocks. Well, sometimes the School of Hard Knocks is a good way to learn, and sometimes it is not a good way to learn. Because the School of Hard Knocks, those lessons are just random, and they don't really give you a plan, an intentional plan for growth. The timing gap is the third one, and I thought this was very interesting. John said, when I was a kid, one of my father's favorite riddles to us went like this. 5 frogs are sitting on a log. 4 decide to jump off. How many are left? Hold up your hands if you know the answer. Hold up the fingers on your hand. Let me say it again. 5 frogs are sitting on a log. 4 decide to jump off. How many are left? 1. Somebody else says 5. The answer is 5, because there's a difference between deciding to jump off and jumping off. I thought that was really, really cute. I may put that on Facebook tomorrow. And if y'all know the answer and you see it, well, don't give me the answer. Okay, so let's see what everybody says. And I'm on page 5. He talks about the law of diminishing intent says, the longer you wait to do something that you should do now, the greater the odds that you will never actually do it. Thought that was very, very good. Okay, the next gap that happens sometimes is called the mistake gap. I'm afraid of making a mistake. And a lot of us have this fear of making a mistake because growing can be messy sometimes. You have to admit you do not have all the answers. You actually have to make mistakes in order to learn how to do it right sometimes. And somebody, this actually helped John write one of his books called Failing Forward. Warren Bennis says, a mistake is simply another way of doing something. Rod always tells me, you know, your way is not always the only way. There is to do something. We have to get over that fear we have of making mistakes. The next gap that we have sometimes is the perfection gap. And I know this is a problem for me. I have to find the best way to do it before I can get started. We hear this almost every day. Sigh, I just can't get myself motivated to do it. I want to lose weight, but I just can't motivate it. Well, motivation is not going to strike you like lightning. It's not going to happen that way. The whole idea of motivation is a trap. Forget motivation. They said, just do it. Now, what does that sound familiar? Where have we heard that before? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just do it.
Linda, I was just thinking that like 2 slides back, or no, the slide before. I was thinking that ties in with our other book study of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It really did.
Exactly. And she spoke at convention for those of you who weren't there, but the lady who wrote that book that we studied, she spoke at convention and she was really good and I love it. And I was so glad that we had already studied that book. Oh, whoops, I think I went too fast. The next one, number 7, is on page 8 in your book, the comparison gap. Others are better than I am. Yes, others are better than you. There are people who are better than all of us, absolutely all of us. But the only way you're going to learn is from somebody else who is better than you. So it's silly to compare yourself, and we talk about not comparing ourselves. John tells about how early in his career, he went to a leaders conference in Orlando, Florida, and when he got there, he felt very intimidated because he said he realized the other pastors and leaders that were there had organizations that were like 6 times bigger than his, and they had a lot better ideas than he did. But that by being there, he was very encouraged because he discovered there were great men there who were willing to share their ideas, and he learned so much. And that would not have happened had there not been people there better than him, ahead of him. And, you know, there are lots of people ahead of me, of course, and I sometimes get intimidated because I'm a little older than most of the ambassadors that I know. But especially since I've made Sapphire, I've had a lot of people send me friend requests, and several ladies who are in that older age gap who wrote to me and said, you know, they wanted to be my friend because they were motivated by the fact that if I did it, maybe they could do it too. So there's always somebody else, bigger, better than you, higher than you. The next thing is the expectation gap, and this is on page 9 if you're following along. I thought it would be easier than this. Well, you know what? I personally, as far as being Sapphire, I never thought it would be easier because it isn't easy. It's hard. It's hard to do it. You are not going to just float there and get there accidentally like floating down the river. It's just not going to happen that way for you. So, people, how do you create your own luck? Have you ever heard that before? You create your own luck? The way you create, I think I missed one. Let me go back. No, I guess I didn't. No. The way you create your own luck is to prepare for growth. Have an attitude that you want to grow. Have the opportunity and put it into action, or in other words, do something about it. And that'll equal luck because you actually did it yourself. It all starts with preparation. That's on page 9. You cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction. And for a lot of us who started when we first started in Plexus, we listened to a tape by Jim Rohn, who was very well-known network marketer. And this is a direct quote from him. It's found on the bottom of page 9. Making the transition to intentional growth. So we know we're not going to get there by accident. So how do we intentionally get there? First of all, we have to ask the big question, and we ask it now. Change the question from how long will this take to how far can I go? So ask yourself, where do you want to go in life? What direction do you want to go? What is the farthest you can imagine going? And I was thinking about that today as I was getting ready for this. You know, I think I can make diamond. I definitely do. And I've thought, could I make double diamond? I don't know. I don't know. But I'll give it a try. I will give it a try. But my first goal is to make diamond. Another thing is to do it now. That's the bottom of page 10. W. Clement Stone, have any of y'all ever heard of him? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of him. That's what I thought. Y'all are not old enough to have heard from him. He was a billionaire business person who made his money in insurance. He spoke at my high school graduation. And John said in 1974, see, that's how long ago it was. In 1974, he attended a seminar in Ohio where this W. Clement Stone spoke. And he said, before you get out of bed every morning, say, do it now, 50 times. And before you go to bed every night, say, do it now, 50 times. And he said, there were about 8,000 people in the audience that day, but I felt like he was talking to me personally when he said that. And he said he started doing it. It gives him a great sense of urgency, and that he did it for about 6 months. He did that. So that makes growth a priority when you look at it like that. By starting this book, you have already started the process of growth just by reading this book. Later is a dream killer word. Like, I'll start the diet tomorrow. Well, eventually I'm going to get around to looking for that other job. The pursuit of the life dream that begins with the word someday or later is a dream killer. By reading this book, you've already started that process. Making the transition to intentional growth. There are 10 factors that are going to help you get there. The third one is face the fear factor. There's 5 factors that keep people from becoming successful. The fear of failure, the fear of trading security for the unknown, the fear of being overextended financially. That's what keeps a lot of people from getting in Plexus. They think they can't afford it, and they are afraid they will fail, and then look what they did. They're afraid of what other people will say or think, and they're afraid that if they do become successful, it will alienate other people. I don't think that one's nearly as common as the others are. But which of those emotions are you going to allow to be stronger, fear or faith? Because we all have faith. We have to change from an accidental growth to intentional growth. And he said the only difference between a rut and a grave is how long it is. Eleanor Roosevelt said, one's philosophy is not best expressed in words. It's expressed in the choices one makes. In the long run, we shape our lives and we shape ourselves. And that quote is on page 13 in your book if you're following along. Next, applying the law of intentionality to your life. Look at your calendar for the next 12 months. What are you doing to grow intentionally? How about tomorrow? What are you doing to grow tomorrow? How much time have you specifically scheduled for personal growth? None. Most people do not schedule time for personal growth. So let's just start now. No matter what day it is that you're reading this or listening to this, start now. Chapter 2 begins on page 16. The law of awareness. You have to know yourself to grow yourself. Now, I have a picture here that I pulled up from a movie, First 50 Dates. And I saw this movie. It was made in 2004, but I saw it within the last year. I can't remember exactly when, but I know we were on a plane. Maybe it was last year when we were going to Hawaii, because it was on one of those long plane rides where you can watch, 2 or 3 or 4 movies. And I saw it. Have any of y'all ever seen it? Raise your hand if you've seen it. Lisa's seen it. Misty's seen it. Here's what it was. This girl, Drew Barrymore, was working, or her dad, I think her dad owned a cafe. And Adam Sandler went in the cafe once and saw her and thought she was really cute and wanted to, get better acquainted with her, wanted to eventually ask her out for a date. So she wasn't very friendly with him. So he left, came back the next day, and she was there again, and she acted like, she had never met him before and didn't have anything to do with him. So he comes back day after day after day, and then he finds out that she actually had an accident a long time ago, and she doesn't remember. She has no short-term memory. So every day when he goes and meets her, it's like she's meeting him for the very first time. So they go out eventually on 50 dates, and even at the end, she still doesn't remember, but she begins to realize that she doesn't remember. And at the end, they help her, try to remember every day, but she has no short-term memory. This idea came from a real man in 1957, whose name was Henry, and I actually pulled up his picture on Google. And what happened to him is he had epilepsy, and they did an experimental surgery on him and took out part of his brain. And it was somewhat successful in that he never had epileptic seizures anymore, but he also had no short-term memory. So every day when he got up, it was like the same day all over again. So the point of that was he had no direction. He didn't know where he was going because he thought it was a new thing every single day. Do you have a sense of direction? On page 17, if you're keeping up in your book. If you want to grow, you have to know and understand yourself. You have to know where you're going and where you currently are. You've been to a mall before. You've gone up to this directory thing at the mall, and it says, this is where you are, a dot. This is where you are. And you can find where it is that you want to go by looking at the map from where you are. There's 3 kinds of people in life, John says, when it comes to having direction in life. People who don't know what they would like to do, people who know what they'd like to do but they don't do it, and people who know what they would like to do and they do it. You have to know who you are to grow to your potential, but you have to grow in order to know who you are. Thought that was a very interesting sentence. The way to start is to pay attention to your passions. You have to find your passion, find your purpose. Do you like what you're doing now? What would you like to do? You'll never fulfill your destiny doing work you despise. John talked about when he was younger, he used to work in a packing plant, and he absolutely despised it. And he never wanted to stay there, and of course we know that he didn't. But if you despise the work that you're doing, you need to change and do something else. Can you do what you would like to do? Do you know the difference between what you want and what you're good at? John talks about when he was a pastor, his minister of praise, which is like the man who leads the music, he wasn't very good at it. And John asked him one day, I can't remember what his name was, if you could do whatever you would like to do, what would it be? And do you all remember what he said, if you got to read that part? He said, I would like to be an announcer for the Chicago Cubs. Well, John said, I knew that he wasn't qualified to do that. He was probably never going to do that because he didn't know how to do that. He was passionate about it, but he wasn't good at it. Do you know what drives you and what gives you satisfaction? Do you know what your values and priorities are? And what are your organization's values and priorities? Do you know why you want to do what you would like to do? Do you know what to do so that you can do what you want? Do you know people who do what you'd like to do? Well, you know, in Plexus, we all know people who know what to do. So we need to find somebody who's ahead of us along the journey, which, you know, in most of your cases is me and Heather. And there's people ahead of us that we can learn from and get mentored by. Should you do what you'd like to do with them? Will you pay the price to do what you want to do, or taking the necessary steps to live your dreams and do what you want to do? It will cost you something. And I marked some particular words down. Let's see. Okay, I'll get to it. Do you know what you'd like to do? Should you do what you'd like? Will you pay the price? When can you start doing what you'd like to do? Nobody ever got ready by waiting. You will only get ready by starting. And the 10th one is, what will it be like when you get to do what you'd like to do? Because nothing else compares to doing what you were created to do. And John said, here are the words I wrote down on page 32. When you get to do what you want to do, what you're passionate about, it will be different from what you thought it would be. It will be more difficult than you thought it would be, but it will be better than you thought it would be. Because he said, you know, it's this journey to where he is now has been very different from what he expected. But he loves it. He absolutely loves it. He said, I had to give some things up to get to that point. And for me personally, I'm a grandmother. I have 11 children. I've had to give up some time with my family and with my grandchildren to get where I am. I'm going to have to still give up some more to get to Diamond. I mean, there's a lot of other things I could be doing in a day besides sitting here and talking to people on my computer. But I'm willing to do that right now at this point in my life. John says there's 2 great days in a person's life: the day you were born and the day you discover why you were born. That's a great way to end this chapter, I think. Do you all have any questions or comments? We made it in about 30 minutes. Any questions, anybody? If you haven't read the book yet, please do. It's never too late to get started. I had to order the book, and I just got it a few days ago, although I had it on Audible, and I'd started listening to it on Audible, but I just don't get nearly as much out of it when I listen on Audible. But Rod does. He's an Audible learner. I'm a read it on the page kind of learner. Anybody else? Any comments, questions? Nothing?
I haven't read that far yet, so I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I am a visual person too, so the PowerPoint presentation is spot on for me. That was really nice. It's engaging and it caught my attention. So thank you for putting that together. I know you put some work into that.
Well, it only took a couple hours, but because I'm a perfectionist. I kept going back and making this red and that green and all that. But that's the way I learn. And I probably learned more in these 2 chapters than any of you because I made myself do this. So anyway, thank you, Kristen. I appreciate it.
And I love the commitment of this team to personal growth. And, you know, we should probably have 30 or 40 people on these calls. But you know what? We have 6, and it's 6 that are gaining some value, and hopefully other people are going to listen in, because just the personal growth since being in Plexus, and then I think the direction that our team has taken towards personal growth in the last year has made a real difference in my life and in how I interact with others and with my team. And so, you know, thank you for you and Heather and y'all stepping up for committing to our team having personal growth.
Well, you know, we've learned that that's what it takes. That's what it's going to take. And we're not there. You know, the day I die, I'm not going to be there yet, but I'm going to keep working toward it. So thank you all so much for being here. Lisa, you can stop the recording.
Okay.
And we'll unmute everybody.